My neighbor Karen's curtains were so hideous they could have starred in a horror flick, but somehow I got slapped with a $35,000 fine for my tasteful beige drapes. Welcome to Maple Grove, where the HOA's rulebook is thicker than the Bible and twice as vengeful. It started with a letter, slipped under my door like a coward's calling card. Your curtains violate Section 4.2.7, Aesthetic Standards, it read, followed by a fine that made my coffee spill. 35 grand for curtains I'd picked to match my soul understated, functional, human. Karen, the HOA president with a perm as tight as her grip on power, had decided my window dressings were a blight on the community. I laughed until I cried, then cried until I raged. My savings were already thin from a leaky roof, and now this? I pictured Karen smirking over her manicured lawn, her own floral curtains screaming 1980s funeral parlor vibes. The hypocrisy burned. I stormed to her McMansion, receipt in hand, ready to negotiate. Karen answered in a silk robe, her eyes glinting like a hawk spotting prey. Rules are rules, Emily, she purred, and your curtains are an eyesore. I pointed out her own tacky drapes, but she waved me off, citing her presidential exemption. My blood boiled. This wasn't about curtains, it was personal. She'd hated me since I'd parked my beat-up Honda in her visitor spot last summer. I left her porch vowing war. The HOA meeting was a circus. Karen presided like a dictator, her gavel banging as neighbors squirmed in folding chairs. I presented my case. My curtains were neutral, compliant, and unlike hers purchased this decade. The board, a clique of her cronies, yawned. Pay the fine or face foreclosure, Karen snapped, her smile venomous. Foreclosure? For curtains? The room spun. My home, my sanctuary, was at stake over a petty grudge. I saw red, then clarity. I'd sue. Finding a lawyer who'd take on an HOA over curtains was like finding a unicorn in a landfill. But Jake, a scrappy attorney with a vendetta against HOAs, took my case pro bono. This is abuse of power, he growled, flipping through Karen's rulebook. We filed a lawsuit for wrongful fining, emotional distress, and defamation. Karen had called my taste trashy in the HOA newsletter. The stakes were high. Lose, and I'd owe legal fees on top of the fine. Win, and I could turn the tables. The courtroom was a pressure cooker. Karen sat across from me, her lawyer a slick shark in a pinstripe suit. I felt like a mouse in a snake pit. Jake laid out our case. The fine was arbitrary, the rule vague, and Karen's enforcement selective. He showed photos of her garish curtains, drawing gasps from the gallery. Karen's defense? Community standards matter, she said, her voice dripping with fake sincerity. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with steel-gray hair, wasn't buying it. She grilled Karen on the rule's wording, her exemptions, her vendetta. Karen squirmed, her facade cracking. Then came the bombshell. Jake produced emails leaked by a disgruntled HOA board member showing Karen had targeted me to teach a lesson after the parking spat. The courtroom buzzed. The judge's eyes narrowed. I felt a spark of hope, but fear lingered. Karen's influence ran deep. What if the judge was in her pocket? My heart pounded as closing arguments began. Jake was fire, painting Karen as a tyrant wielding the HOA like a club. Her lawyer fumbled, citing precedent that didn't exist. The gavel fell. Recess. Days later, the verdict hit like a thunderclap. The judge ruled the fine unlawful, citing abuse of power and selective enforcement. Karen's face went white as the judge awarded me $70,000, double the fine for damages and legal fees. The gallery erupted. I wanted to dance, to scream, but I just sat there, stunned, as Jake grinned. We got her, he whispered. Karen stormed out, her heels clicking like a retreating army. Victory tasted sweet, but the aftertaste was bitter. Karen moved away. Her reign over Maple Grove ended, but the neighborhood felt fractured. Neighbors who'd stayed silent now whispered about reform, but trust was gone. I kept my curtains up, a quiet rebellion, but every time I looked at them, I saw the cost, not just the money, but the community torn apart by one woman's ego. I'd won the battle, but the war left scars. Freedom comes at a price, and mine was learning that even in victory, some losses cut deeper than any fine.